Hello and welcome back to Colouring in Lost in Time by RJ Hampson. This is Mr Fogarty's Time Travel Adventures. This page is called Secret Recipe. It's set in the Iron Age. Mr Fogarty meets a Celtic druid and learns how to make a potent potion. I've decided to base the page using Caran Neocolor II, and I'm showing you here on a recent visit to my local art store that I've picked up this pencil tin from Faber-Castell, and I'm going to use it to store my Neocolor IIs that I am picking up open stock. I've decided not to buy the full set of Neocolor II in one go and instead build a collection of colours that I actually think I'm going to use or really like, because quite often with full sets I have pencils or markers or crayons that I just never reach for and never get used. So this way I thought that I would build a collection of colours that I actually want to use. The initial 15 set that I had there was a gift from Annika at Axic Fumbles, so thank you Annika. I really do appreciate you getting me started with the Neocolor IIs. While I was at the art store, I also picked up a couple of other things, and I picked up a small set of paintbrushes that was rather cheap. It was only $8.95 Australian by Montmartre. I don't think they're going to be great brushes, but they are synthetic brushes. These are called rounds, and there are various sizes in that set. So I'm going to give those a go. On previous pages I've used quite yellow based greens for Mr Fogarty, but this one I'm going to use the blue based greens that I have here off to the side. And I start by using the method that I tend to use with many water-based mediums, and that is that I wet the page and then pick a bit of colour up off of the pencil tip or the crayon tip and put the colour onto the damp paper. I find this particular method makes it much easier for me to blend colours, but I tend to colour this way quite often because I just actually like the method itself. I find it relaxing to sit with the pencil or the crayon and lift the colour from the tip and build the colour up gradually. I find this particular method to be quite meditative, and it just really slows me down in my thinking, and I focus on what I'm doing and I let go of other things, and I just enjoy my colouring time a lot more when I work this way. You will see me try a few different methods with these Neocolor IIs. They are quite new to me. I haven't used them an awful lot, so I do give it a go with other methods. But I find that when I use the crayons directly onto the paper and then dilute them, that I don't feel like they dilute properly, and I get a much more textured effect that I don't necessarily enjoy or want all the time. So I encourage you, if you have a go at working this way as well, that there is a bit of a learning curve with it. You may not like the results the first time that you do it, and it's something that you have to give a bit of time and experimentation with them to gain a way of working that pleases you or you enjoy doing. I'll just remind you that this book that I'm using is an Amazon Australia printed book, and therefore the results that you get on different paper around the world may not be the same as what I'm getting with this particular book. So what I might do is let you watch what I'm doing and listen to a bit of music for a little while, and I'll let you know if there's anything that I need to explain. But what I'm doing off to the side sometimes with the newer crayons is that they feel like they have a bit of a protective coating when you get them. So I've just been scribbling off to the side there to get rid of some of that protective coating, and I also use the colour that I have scribbled off on the scrap paper to dilute it with some water and pick it up and use it as a paint as well. So I'll be back with you very soon. I also picked up this small porcelain palette while I was at the art store because I found that I enjoy working with the porcelain palettes much more than plastic ones. They're very easy to clean up and they just feel nicer to work with. I'm going to use it with the Neocolor IIs, and I'm using a knife to scrape a little bit of colour, and then I'm going to dilute it and use a small brush to get into smaller, tighter areas. I find the crayons themselves to be quite bulky, and you can use a sharpener with them, but I would rather scrape off a bit of colour and work this way. It is also going to be very handy to use a little bit of colour mixing and colour theory knowledge to extend this small set of Neocolor IIs to create a much wider range of colour. If you're not very confident with your colour mixing or colour theory, I advise you to borrow a book from the library. Most art books have a section about colour theory and how to mix your colours. And also on the internet, there are many people sharing knowledge about colour theory and colour mixing as well. So have a look into that if you're not very confident, because you can stretch a small set of basic colours into a much wider range of colour. While I'm colouring this section that isn't any different to anything that you've already seen, I thought that I would just have a talk about something that has come to my notice. And that is putting music on the background of videos that have voiceovers and have been sped up. Now, I've started doing that for a couple of reasons. One being that the more complex the page, the longer the video, the harder it is to upload the video. So I need to do that in shorter periods of time or in parts. I've noticed that when I upload a longer video in parts, that the second or third part of the series doesn't seem to be viewed very well. So the analytics show that the viewing time, is cut right down. So I'd like some feedback about that, because if nobody's really watching those ones to the end, there's really no point me doing it. It does take quite a long time to record and edit and upload videos. Also, I've had a couple of videos where there's been a lot of background noise, and so I've had to cut the audio so that you don't hear all of that. And also, it's just getting difficult with these longer videos to think of things to talk about. And I'm not sure whether people would prefer to hear long silences in between the voiceover, or whether you expect to hear some sort of commentary the whole way through. But although I am using different pencil brands and trying to alternate the mediums that I use, there really isn't anything new to talk about, and there are only so many ways that I can describe what I'm doing. So it's getting really hard to find things to talk about and explain while I'm actually colouring. So if you could give me a little bit of feedback about how you feel about the way the series is going, how you feel about music in the background, and in particular this video that will have long silences, if you can let me know how you find that, I would really appreciate it. So you could leave me a comment in the comment box, or you can send me a private message via Instagram, and I would really appreciate hearing your thoughts on the subject. Initially I was scribbling on this scrap paper off to the side to try and remove that protective coating that you get on the crayons when you first buy them, and then I thought, why not try diluting the colour on the paper there, lifting it off and painting with it like you would with watercolour paint, and it worked really well. So this is another option for how you can use your Neocolor IIs. I know that Caran do make a plastic board that you can scribble onto and lift the colour off, but I believe that it is quite expensive. You can buy plastic cutting board, you know, from a cheaper store and try that as well. I know lots of people do use their Neocolor IIs that way, but the scrap paper actually did work quite well as well. So you can use a number of ways to dilute the colour and pick it up, and this helps to make these crayons a very cost-effective medium to use, because you really don't need very much. You can see from that small area that I scribbled that I've actually managed to create and pick up quite a bit of colour to add to my page. So that's just another way that you can work with your Neocolor IIs if you haven't already thought of this way. I chose to mix a little bit of blue in with the colours for this tree, and it didn't really turn out how I was expecting it, but it was actually quite a nice surprise because I felt like it gave it a bit of a mystical feeling about it. It gave it that sort of bluish purple hue about it. So I quite often like to bring different colours into tree trunks and organic things instead of just using brown and green and sort of natural colours. It's really nice every now and again to put a pop of colour that's unexpected into those sorts of items, and it just helps to lift the picture and give the whole thing a different feel. I felt like these larger areas of grass or ground in the background and the sky would be a good chance to try using the crayons directly onto the paper. And I have mixed feelings about the results when I use the crayons directly on the paper. I feel like it's much more solid looking and less like watercolour, and my personal preference with most of these water-based mediums is that I like to try and create a watercolour-like effect. So whilst there's actually nothing wrong with it, it's just not to my liking all the time. Time to think about putting some sky in, and this is a good example of how getting into the tighter areas, the smaller areas, is a little bit more difficult with the crayon itself. But I decided to stop a bit short of the line, and I thought that I would be able to use the brush and water when I dilute it to move that colour closer towards the edges. So I found that the pigment seemed to dilute quite well while I was applying the water to it, but once it dried I felt like it left a little bit too much texture in there still. But at this point it's not looking too bad, so I decided to continue adding colour to the background using the crayons directly onto the paper. As with many of our colouring supplies, a lot of our results come down to the actual paper that we're working on. So I will keep trying these Neocolor IIs in different books and in different ways, because I did find that I didn't like the texture in the sky. I like my skies to be a little bit more blended, but the texture could be used to advantage when you're depicting things like trees and stone and foliage that are not necessarily smooth. So you really can use things that are seen as a negative for some areas. You can use them for advantage and make the most of it with other areas. So this is where experimenting and keep trying things on different paper and in different ways, you start to build that little knowledge bank of how different things work in different books, and you can choose your colour mediums or art mediums to best suit the paper that you're working on. After a short break and waiting for the paper to dry, I decided to use some alcohol markers next. This brand is called Bourne and it is available in a store here in Australia called Officeworks, and they were $14.98 for 6 markers, and that's Australian dollars. One set is called Portrait Colours, the other is a grey mix. So I didn't really enjoy the Neocolor IIs on the tight fiddly areas, and I was really looking for something that was going to be a little bit more simple and easy to use on all the details. Initially I thought about making it look like it was stone, but the colour was so similar to the tree that I felt that it was going to be a bit too bland, and decided to bring some colour into it and make it look a little bit more like it was actually organic plants. So this is actually the next day for me here now. It got a little bit dark to keep recording, so I had a break from the page and came back to it with fresh eyes in the morning. I felt like some of the colour was a little bit too light. I wanted to build up a bit of drama, a bit of intensity in the colour and the contrast. So I decided to use Artex pencils to do that. Now initially when I've based a page and I come back with coloured pencils to go over the top, my aim is never to completely cover the base if I can help it, because I feel like that's a little bit redundant to do that. But my goal is usually to use the coloured pencils to just build up the intensity and enhance the base that is already there. However, sometimes when you're doing that, you get darker and darker and other areas seem like they need more work, and it can snowball when you end up covering pretty much all of the base that you've got there. So I try not to do that, but occasionally it does happen. I'm using a combination here of Sakura Jelly Roll Metallic, and this particular pen is an Anko brand, which is a home or house brand to a store called Kmart here in Australia. It's a very, very cheap brand, and it's more of a copper bronze type of colour. So I'm using a combination of the three to add some details now to jewellery, clothing and so on. I like to use the Prismacolor white pencil to put a very subtle highlight back into the page. I find the Prismacolor white pencil to be very useful. It seems to work over just about every other pencil brand and many mediums, and at this stage I only want a very subtle highlight to lighten things up a little bit. I'm starting to add a little bit of contrast here now with a darker violet and some darker browns and so on. And it's just to get that little bit of interest going. Instead of it looking so much like it's a mid-tone over the whole page, I just want some small areas of darker starks so that there is interest, and it helps with the definition, and it just makes it look like things pop a little bit more. I'm very close to finishing now, so I'd just like to say thank you if you're still watching to the end. I appreciate you being here with me, and I look forward to seeing where Mr Fogarty is going to take us in the next instalment. So thank you again and take care. I'll see you again soon. Bye now.